Hi everyone, Anne O'Connell with OC Publishing here, and welcome to the author journey. We have an amazing guest today and what I found, a very heart-wrenching and simultaneously uplifting book. We have Dr. Renee Alsarraf with us, who is the author of this beautiful gem, Sit, Stay, Heal. It's a Harper One, which is an imprint of HarperCollins book, and Dr. Alsarraf, I'm going to give you a little intro, and then I'm going to bring her up to chat about her author journey and how Sit, Stay, Heal came to be, what dogs can teach us about living well. I think they can teach us an awful lot. So we'll find out more from Dr. Alsarraf, who received her veterinary degree in 1991 from Michigan State University and established the university's pet loss support group, which is still in existence today. She completed an internship and oncology residency in New York City at the Animal Medical Center. She's performed many clinical trials, co-authored journal articles, and has lectured locally and nationally. She's created 4 oncology and 3 radiation practices, and currently she works as a senior veterinarian at the Animal Medical Center in New York City. Dr. Alsarraf is the acclaimed author of Sit, Stay, Heal, What Dogs Can Teach Us About Living Well. And this memoir shows how dogs are incredible guides to those when struggling and gives a front row seat to the enormous power of the human-animal bond. She's been on Good Morning America, The Kelly Clarkson Show, and has given over 150 interviews and lectures. Let's add one more and welcome Dr. Alsarraf to the author journey. Hi, Dr. Alsarraf. Hey, Renee. How are you?
It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me, Anne.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. And as I said, this book it brought me to tears. It made me laugh. It warmed my heart because I'm also a fur baby mom. So I am 100% like I found myself nodding and just, having a great old time with your book. So I'm very excited to have you join us today. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. And in your bio, it talks about the Animal Medical Center in New York City. And tell us a little bit about that. We were chatting backstage, and you shared with me how incredible it is.
Yeah, so the Animal Medical Center has been around since the turn of the century in the 1900s. It is the largest nonprofit hospital for animals in the world. It's a fantastic place. We do so much good. If you think of sort of the Mayo Clinic for animals, it's really what it is. It is 9 stories. We have about 150 veterinarians here, most of which are specialists, and we do a lot of training for 30 interns and a whole bunch of residents, and have all the subspecialty fields like oncology, radiation oncology, internal medicine, surgery, ophthalmology, anesthesiology, neurology, and a whole host of other specialties.
Oh my goodness. I wish I lived in New York City so you could be my vet for my kitty. And of course, you deal with all animals, but your practice that you had when you wrote Sit, Stay, Heal was focused on canine oncology, right?
Correct. So what I actually ended up doing is for those of you who haven't read the book, it is a true story, and every chapter is about a different patient of mine and either what that family learned from their dog or what I learned, and then woven through is my backstory. There are actually two different cats that are in the book as well. And I thought about all of my patients that I have had, and I just started writing and making lists of the different things that I learned from them or that their families learned. And goodness, I had dogs and I had cats, I had ferrets and some bunnies. But from where I was at that moment in my life or how the story really unfolded, it was those, I don't even know, maybe 12 or so dogs where their lessons in life really fit with mine. And so that's why I just did primarily dogs.
Those particular patients, because you had a thriving practice,
Mhm.
and had treated lots of animals for cancer, and then you had your own cancer diagnosis.
Unfortunately, yes.
Right. And so, I mean, what really then said to you, oh, I have to write a book about this? Like, what
Yeah.
was the aha moment?
Yeah. So I have always wanted to write a book. I always thought in a second life I would love to be a book editor, but
Oh,
being
call me. I could use
being
you.
a veterinarian is just really on some level just takes over your entire life, right? It's all in, it's exhausting, and yet we all tend to love it. And between being a veterinarian, owning my own businesses, being a mom, running a family and a household, volunteering in my community, I never ever thought I would have time to write a
Mm,
book. So I didn't really think much of
right.
it. And then, unfortunately, when I got, as I call it, the C word, and
Mm.
for those of you, I just, that's my dysfunction. I
Yeah, no, it
treat
makes
it,
me cringe
yeah,
too,
I treat it
Renee.
every day. I fight it for all
Yeah,
my veterinary patients, but I just couldn't own that word for myself. And
yeah.
my technicians would say, Dr. Alsarraf, that's not what the C word means. But for me, just couldn't do it, right? I still can't. Only now it's a lowercase c. It
Yes,
doesn't get status with a capital C.
I
But
love
at the
that.
time that I did get the C word, I didn't do any social media, showing my age. And I realized, even though so many people would call me up or text or email asking how I was doing in my protocol, it was really taxing and exhausting
Mm.
to tell people over and over. So I took to emailing what ended up being 75 of my closest friends every couple of weeks, just with an update. And
Mhm.
I want all the listeners to know, you know what, if anyone ever does that, even if they're getting a knee replaced, the emails that you send, or at least for me, they were my lifelines. They
Mm.
were words of encouragement and love. I could read them when I was in a place feeling well enough to read them. I could reread them if I needed some hope. But in
Mm.
addition to that, so many people would write, have you ever thought about writing a book? You really should write a book. Blow them all off, right? They thought, oh,
Yeah.
whatever. Finished all the treatments, convalesced, went back to work, and I might bump into someone at the grocery store and would say, have you started writing your book? Still blow them off. Then my husband and I went away for a long weekend to Rhode Island, and we stayed at this beautiful hotel. And at the time, they delivered a newspaper to your door, which I just think is such a
Oh,
luxury, right? To
I
get
love
to read
that.
that. And I only and always read two very specific parts of the newspaper, the comics and my horoscope, right?
So you say comics and lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. It's perfect. So
Yeah.
under my horoscope, Scorpio, that spring day, it literally said, you should begin writing your book today. And 2 days later, I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I noted, as I was reading is I really like, and you mentioned earlier, I really liked the way that you wove in your own experience with, when you were treating your patients and
Mhm.
talking to their families. And so I wondered, when you were writing the emails,
Uh-huh.
so I have two questions. When you're writing the emails, did you intersperse that with your updates and say, I had a similar experience with one of my patients and blah, blah, blah? When did that sort of dawn on you that you would
Okay. So, Anne, I have,
follow that format?
yep, I have done over 150 different interviews, and no one has asked me that question before. Yeah. But no, I did not actually include that
Okay.
anything about the veterinary world um, in my emails, except maybe
Interesting.
something funny like I'm going to the dogs, or something like that.
Right.
It really wasn't until I decided I'm going to write this book,
Hmm.
um, and for me, I've been told that it's sometimes hard to do that back and forth comparison, but for me, that was really the only way.
It was natural. It really, it flowed.
Thank you.
And so, and my other question, sort of in keeping with that, is I know for myself, so I do a lot of mentoring and writing coaching. But before I was a publisher, I was an author, and I'm trying to get back to my own writing. And I keep saying to myself, you need to put your own advice into action. So at what points when you were in the midst of your own treatments, did you say to yourself, okay, I'm not listening to my own advice that I tell my patients' families? Like, was there ever like those moments where you'd go, I should practice what I preach?
You know what? It was actually the opposite side of that coin. It
Okay.
wasn't what I would tell the pet parents. It's what I would see from our four-legged friends.
Oh.
And I decided, you know, because we already know I'm dysfunctional, I can't say the word, that I could will away any of the issues or problems that you would often hear people experience, or I'm sure, you know, a lot of us have known people that have gone through it, because I would see firsthand every single day for 30 years what a dog, how a dog would act during this, or a cat. And I decided to model myself after them. They were actually my recovery role models.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that. Okay, so what would the little voice in your head that maybe was Cosmo or like one of your other patients, what would it say, and what moment would it snap you out of?
Right. I don't know that it ever snapped me out because I went into it with a battle type mentality.
Okay.
Again, for those of you who haven't read the book,
Warrior woman.
Exactly. It is truly life lessons from dogs. And there are numerous lessons in every chapter. You know, every dog presented differently, or their lesson was differently. And I tried to use each of those. And when I was going through, say, the chemotherapy or the radiation or the surgery, I didn't think of it in such a categorical way.
Right.
But once I sat down and thought about which animals I was modeling myself after, it just made sense to me. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yes, it certainly does. And it's so funny, you know, they say that, you know, you start to look like your animals. Like, do I look like a cat? And and you know, I have friends who have boxers, and they are just such unique little fur babies. And you know, and my heart broke for you when you lost Newton.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my goodness. Was there ever a thought that you wouldn't get another boxer, that you would get a different breed?
Right. So I have actually had 5. And if we talk about us looking like our breed, I'm going to be in trouble with wrinkles and drool.
They're gorgeous.
You know, it's hard because they are the #1 breed for cancer. Unfortunately, they're tied with golden retrievers. And a lot of it, unfortunately, was from decades ago, like 70 years, decades ago. And a lot of recessive genes were bred in to them.
Wow.
So that is hard. And my current one is actually, you know, we adopted her at 4.5. But for me, it's just the perfect fit. It really, really is.
And I just have to share this picture. Is there one at the back? Yes, there is. Look at this. Look how beautiful. Now, is that Newton, or is that?
No, that is Dusty. That's
Dusty.
Yes.
No, look how beautiful is she. Look at that. And they just bring such joy. So let's talk about some of the themes and the messages. One of the things that you say in your book is honesty balanced with compassion is my preferred path. Because I think, you know, what you're dealing with, you know, some pretty heavy situations. And sometimes it's hard to get that balance, right? So how do you get that balance?
how do I get the balance of honesty?
Honesty and compassion. Because sometimes,
Oh,
well, although it's kind to be honest, though, right?
oh my goodness. I think it's really the only way.
Mm,
Because if we're talking about a serious subject, and it doesn't have to be cancer, it could be
mm,
any host
mhm,
of things. I'm
mhm,
not doing anyone any favors if I'm not giving accurate information for that family then to make the best decision, not only for their pet, but for themselves as well. I
right.
see it not just not sitting across from that family, but sitting next to them and
Mhm,
getting to know the whys behind the reasons that
mhm,
they treat
mhm,
and hoping to turn around their fear and uncertainty with knowledge and hope or optimism.
mhm,
Um, and while being a veterinary oncologist can be a very trying job, it can be emotionally draining. To get to know that family, to give them maybe another holiday season or another 3 summers,
mm,
I find what happens is they stop taking things for granted. For instance, total human nature, I do it all the time, easy to take things for granted. But
mhm,
when, say, you know that maybe your four-legged family member only has another year, or maybe 3 years, or maybe only 6 months, you start to really cherish and enjoy each day. And
yes,
so to see that is just a
yes,
wonderful gift.
yes. And I really like that you kept emphasizing it's about quality of life,
Mhm.
right? And you also were very clear in each scenario that there is no wrong decision here, right? And I think
That's
that is, having had to put, an animal down myself, it was the most heartbreaking thing I've ever done, but it will never stop me from having a pet because I believe in the healing power of our fur babies for sure. And you talked about one of the your patients that really stuck with me was the cocker spaniel with the little girl in the wheelchair,
right.
and how the communication happens at a much deeper level. So
Yes.
talk a little bit about that because that really is
Sure.
incredible.
Absolutely. If you don't mind to backtrack a little bit just for the
Yes.
listeners, there
Yes.
is never a wrong answer with your decision as long as you are always leading with your pet's quality of life in mind.
Yes.
We all want their lifespans to be a whole lot longer than they are.
Forever.
We all
Right.
do. But as long as you're basing your decisions in their best quality of life, you will never make the wrong decision. Um,
Yeah.
Going back to something else that you said too, if you don't mind, and you
No,
can tell
no.
me to be quiet,
No,
is
please
is
no.
right is yes, it is terribly painful. It is heart wrenching. It is gut wrenching when we lose an animal, and I think it's even harder when we have to console our child, right? Because it's
Mhm.
hard enough for us to grieve, but then we want to be mama bears or papa bears and protect our kids from that,
Mhm.
but we can't, and that's sadly part of growing up and dealing with emotions. But I firmly believe that these pets are put in our lives at different times at just the right moment to teach us something, sometimes things that we didn't even realize, or to fill a need or a hole that we didn't even realize could be filled or needed to be filled.
Mhm.
And I've had the blessing of having a few dogs in my life, or many dogs in my life given my age, where I have had different lessons from each one of them.
Mhm.
Back to your ultimate question, I totally forgot it. How's that?
Oh,
Oh,
the
Yes,
depth of
Daisy. Yes,
communication, yeah, with
yes,
nonverbal communication.
yes. So, in that first chapter, Daisy is a Cocker Spaniel that was diagnosed with cancer. She did great. I treated her for 3 years and she continued to do well, even off of her
Mhm.
chemotherapy. And she was a steadfast companion to 9-year-old Kathy, who had been adopted as an infant and had a tremendous amount of special needs. She could not talk. She couldn't eat by her mouth. She had to be fed with a feeding tube through her stomach. Her body was unable to support itself. So she was held in her special wheelchair by safety belts. She could not use her arms and her legs. When she originally came in to see me with her mom and her dog Daisy was dressed as Elsa from the Disney,
Frozen.
right? Frozen in her pretty satin blue dress, which is great. And what was amazing is, despite not being able to verbalize, right, her dog knew exactly what she needed and what she was saying. What I didn't learn right up front and later learned months later is that Kathy also had uncontrollable epilepsy. So she had a lot of seizures. And Daisy, having no formal training or even informal training whatsoever, became a seizure alert dog for the family, so that then the parents could rush over to the girl before she went into an epileptic episode.
Make sure she was safe.
Yes.
Wow.
And, I tried to compare, because really the family brought it into it. For those of you who have never seen the movie Frozen, right? Elsa, in her blue dress, is able to manipulate ice and snow to make that world a better place. And I really felt that Daisy was able to manipulate their world to make it a much better place.
Oh, and bless you for keeping her, healthy for more time for them to appreciate that. So, I just, again, every single scenario just really struck me like to my very core. And I meant to, one of your reviewers said, "Sit, Stay, Heal will live with you long after the last page." And that's John Grogan, author of Marley and Me, one of my all-time favorite movies, like anything with animals, right? Which is kind of cool. Would you like to read an excerpt for us?
Sure, I would be happy to. And, I found a quote from Louise Gluck, who is a famous poet, was a famous poet. And she said that writing is a kind of revenge against circumstance. And I felt that was very apropos, right?
Oh, I like that.
Yes.
I have to use that in my next retreat.
Oh, good. Yeah, we should all remember that. Or, it would be a great workshop type thing.
Absolutely.
So I'll read an excerpt from chapter 3, just a little bit backstory. Bentley is a very overweight beagle who, when he walks, his belly practically scrapes the floor. He's always about treats, and he is always brought in by his pet, his dad, if you will, who is an extremely gruff man that I later learned was a psychiatrist. But sometimes in the beginning of our relationship, it was strained because this gentleman just didn't have any patience or any tolerance for any of it, although he had elected to treat his dog, who did very, very well. So I will go. On Bentley's 4th visit, I walk out to the pair and sit down next to Dr. Bean in the waiting room. He taps his right foot. He looks at me, and I look back. Healing and caring for someone, even a 4-legged someone, requires understanding and compassion among everyone involved. I extend an olive branch. "How are you today, Dr. Bean?" You never answered my question. Which question was that? Which one of us will die first, me or him? I search his face, trying to uncover why he is asking me this. I have certainly had clients who were quite old, caring for a young dog, wondering if they will be able to keep up with an energetic pup. That concern is obvious. This is not so apparent. Dr. Bean is in his early 60s. For all intents and purposes, he seems healthy to me. Of course, I thought I was healthy, and then I was told I had the C word, so what do I know? Dr. Bean begins to talk. It is as if, through all of Bentley's appointments, he has kept everything bottled up. And today, Finally, he is uncorked. As he shares, Dr. Bean's face begins to soften. He relaxes, and his shoulders settle downward. He tells me that he loves being a psychiatrist and that he believes in the good work of the medical profession. 1 year ago, Dr. Bean began having GI issues. Little diarrhea here, a little temporary bloating there. But as the weeks turned into months, his clinical signs progressed, and his GI issues made it difficult for him to go about his standard day. Dr. Bean saw an internist who scheduled him for a colonoscopy with a gastrointestinal specialist. He complied with the unpleasant preparation period that no one likes, not eating anything the night before, drinking what seems like an endless supply of a terrible liquid, and the numerous bathroom trips. The results of the colonoscopy came back nonspecific, nothing to be concerned about. However, Dr. Bean's symptoms grew worse. Rounds of different medications would show promise, but then his symptoms would return in full force. Finally, months later, he underwent a repeat colonoscopy and then more tests. I have advanced stage colon cancer, Dr. Bean confides. My heart sinks. I put my hand on his arm. Dr. Bean stares down at the ground, Bentley whimpering by his side. I don't have long to live, he admits. Suddenly, it all makes sense. How difficult it must be for him, knowing that he and his dog are both running out of time. And here's this person I thought I knew who appeared so irritated with Bentley's chemotherapy appointments, who was really irritated with life in general. Dr. Bean tells me that through everything that he's had to endure, the various chemotherapy protocols, the radiation therapy treatments, the experimental medications, Bentley has never left his side. When Dr. Bean could only lie in bed, recovering from a procedure he hoped would slow his cancer, Bentley would lie there with him. Bentley didn't ask to play ball or go outside on long walks. He didn't bark or bray. He just stayed at his pet parent's side, letting him get much needed rest. Conversely, when Dr. Bean was having a good day, Bentley was there again, eager to accompany his owner, tail wagging, happy to enjoy the time that was ahead. Bentley lived in the moment, accepting each day for what it was. And now this man wants to do everything he can for his steadfast companion. Dr. Bean wants to be the pillar of strength for his dog that his dog has been for him. As hard as it's been for Dr. Bean to come into this veterinary hospital, being reminded of what he himself is going through, Bentley always seems happy to see us. Dr. Bean wants to give Bentley quality time for however long he can. Bentley fights his diagnosis not with stoic bravery, but by taking each moment as it comes, enjoying what's in front of him. But clearly and understandably, this is not easy for Dr. Bean. Overriding all this is Dr. Bean's desperate fear of leaving Bentley behind. And yet the good doctor is torn over the potential of having to grieve the loss of Bentley should Bentley pass away first. So, who is going to die first, me or him? He asks again. How can I answer this? They are in a race against time, a race that neither wants to finish. It doesn't seem fair. At least that's what my medical team always told me. Cancer isn't fair. But that's no comfort at this time. I'm not sure it's ever comforting. It may be true, but it's not what you want to hear. I don't know, I stammer back in a barely audible voice. Isn't that great? Years of being a veterinarian, and that's the first thing out of my mouth. Dr. Bean is still looking at me. I don't know, I repeat, perhaps a little more convincingly this time. But I do know that you are here now, and you are here to help Bentley, and Bentley is as happy as he can be. Thankfully, your dog has not experienced many side effects. Furthermore, he should continue to do well with the remainder of his treatments, and you've given him more happy days. It's so hard for all of us to be in the moment, but Bentley is doing just that. He's happy that the sun comes up each day. He's excited for each silly dog biscuit that he gets, and he loves being with you. Most important, you have this time together.
Oh my goodness, that just Incredible. It's what a wonderful example of the stories that are in your book and the life lesson that Bentley puts forth, to live in the moment. Now, before we wrap up, what is the biggest life lesson that you've learned from writing this memoir?
Okay, so life lessons, obviously, that one for Bentley was, living in the moment, but it was also dogs meet us where we're at. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we necessarily meet each other where we're at, right? We have these expectations. We want something to be different. At least for me, I didn't understand that man's emotion when he was coming into the clinic. And I later had a few wonderful conversations. And really, I look back thinking, I missed out on those first few times that I met him, just assuming he was a crabapple when really he was struggling with all of this. I think they show us the benefit of being a pack animal. They're non-judgmental. I think the overriding theme or lesson that I believe from the book is that dogs are not just incredible companions, but they are fantastic guides for when we struggle. And we all struggle at times. And what I hope the book does is it gives the reader a front row seat to the enormous power of the human animal bond.
I love that. And it's just the picture, the cover illustration, it's so simple, but has such impact. And that's exactly what, the bond is incredible. And, one of the quotes that I pulled from your book that really stayed with me was, if only we all felt free to celebrate our imperfections, life might be a little less grim, a bit more joyful. And that, I really thank you for that little reminder as well. And of course, there's a little bit of humor in there as well. And you talk about the life lesson that your husband learned when you were in the midst of all of your, do you want to share that?
Are you talking about clothing?
When he's doing laundry.
There's a few. One was when I went in for treatment, I always thought that, I'm going to look the best I can, kind of puff myself up and everything. And even if I wasn't feeling great, but, when the lion goes to battle, he puffs up his mane, or a cat puffs herself up. My husband tends to sometimes be a little more casual. And literally one time he was with me, taking me to one of my radiation appointments. He was wearing, and this has to be totally embarrassing because the book is sold in Europe and Asia, and so everyone knows, but he was wearing what had been from 16 years ago, my pregnancy sweatpants that he had painted a bedroom. So they
paint
had
spatters,
flecks of paint, and an old, long sleeve t-shirt that was frayed around the neck. And usually they just call you up, whatever your number is, to go to the radiation room. And instead, the care coordinator came from behind the desk, bent down to him, whispered in his ear, "I'm here to take you back for your radiation, sir," thinking he was the cancer patient. So,
oh my goodness. Well, if my family is watching, they'll understand why I'm laughing about the paint covered sweatpants. So we'll just leave it at that. But
okay.
I can't believe that we've reached our time, and it's just been such a delight to have you on, Dr. Alsarraf, and talk about your memoir, Sit, Stay, Heal, which is out now, available at your local bookstore, and of course all of your favorite online retailers. And it was an amazing read, and I hope that you're working on another book in your busy life.
I do have some ideas, yes.
Yay. And I hope that you're feeling well. You look great.
Yes.
And we just say that C word, beat it, and just keep on plugging away. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for joining me. And please let me know when your next book comes out.
Okay. Thank you so very much. Take care.
You too. And thank you for joining us on the author journey this week. I hope you'll join us again next week and maybe have a look at some of our past author journeys. So for now, I'm Ann O'Connell with OC Publishing, and I'm saying bye for now. See you next time on The Author Journey.